Welcome back from a bit of a hiatus from North Node Astrology. We have Dee today. She was born in Farmington, Missouri on the 14th of April, 1988 at 1:25 p.m., giving her a sun sign of Aries, a rising sign of Leo, and topping off the big three with a ninth house Aries sun. So she is quite the fireball. I know that the chart owner is a feminine, so anybody that comes in after this knows that when I talk about Mars or when I go into Venus, it's going to be from the feminine perspective because that's how the chart owner thinks about themselves and that's how they present. And so, and as with any of the chart readings here on North Node Astrology, and the way astrology works in general is there are levels of and the scales of the masculinity and the femininity tend to come in different ways. Even though Aries is a masculine sign, chart owner is feminine, so she's going to present in a different way. And Leo, male Leos tend to have that very much a roaring kind of persona, whether it's sun, moon, or rising. And the feminines tend to be more, they tend to present more like a female lion, like like a breadwinner. Like they go out in packs and they bring back the kill for the pack. They're very much pack animals, and they will take care of the young ones. Meanwhile, the male Leos, they are the heads, and they are natural energy. Leo is a natural leader energy. So I just wanted to explain that real quick. So let's jump into it. In my personal opinion, Leo is one of the more difficult rising signs because it is based off of obviously our sun sign, and wherever our sun is, that's how it's going to be expressed. So when you project out into the world, when you start anything new, or when anything new comes to you, and that's what the rising sign does, you will be able to see how well somebody does their sun sign through that, right? And how they process through it, right? I think the only more difficult rising sign would be any of the ones that are based with Saturn, because it takes so long to get those set, and because Saturn is at a minimum a 28.5 year rotation through the zodiac, and it literally really does take one full rotation with a Saturn return, so that anyone with either a Capricorn or an Aquarius or any sign, any planets that are based anywhere around that Saturn have a chance to grab. Now, all of us have that portion in our chart, but let's go back to Leo. So Leo rising, D always starts things with a creation, right? Or somebody brings a creation to her, or somebody brings a party, or she starts a party, or she might defend something, because Leos will defend things. And these are, again, this is how she begins anything new, or how anything new comes to her. And this is also the face she wears. So with a Leo rising, there's always something about their hair. They have just this look about their face that you can tell it's very radiant. And with her, ninth house Aries sun, there's an extra element of fire there that is definitely going to add. Like her face probably has even just a little bit of a red look, and when she gets excited, whether angry or happy or whatever, it probably does flush some. And especially with a moon also in Aries, that's definitely going to be pretty relevant also. With Lilith in Leo in the first house, she wants to do things a new way. She wants to do things in a way that was not done before. So there was a Leo in her life when she was younger that did things in a certain way, or she saw other leaders do things in a certain way, and now she's going to do them her own way, and she's going to blaze a trail. She's going to find her own road to El Dorado, and nobody is going to be able to shake her off of that, because Lilith is the feminine, radical, stands with a fist, I am woman, hear me roar portion of the zodiac. And there's nothing that's, going to knock anybody off of their line on that. Lilith is very light switchy. It's either on or off, And there could be a lot of different subjects because, Leo is about a lot of different things, just like all the rest of the zodiac is. And any of those subjects or any specific people that Lilith might turn on or off, because she is in mythology, and I don't know how many people have listened to this before, but I keep throwing this out there. She was the first wife of Adam. She was created as an equal, but Adam wanted a subservient, partner. So Lilith was not willing to do that. So God created Eve, and Lilith went off and did her own thing, being a wild creation out doing her own thing. So she maintains her line no matter what. D's second house begins in Virgo, and that's ruled by Mercury. So it moves kind of fast, and it's about, communication and the hands. So what she values is things that are of service, right? Which is what Virgo does. It works. It is of service. It is not afraid to get its hands dirty. It is about purity. And she is skilled with those things. She's skilled with work, skilled with her hands. And as with any, sign in anybody's chart, a lot of times we will find people to fill in these spaces for us. So when she values people, it may have been a specific Virgo that she valued, right? Or somebody's work ethic. And that's also what this is about. And with her south node there, that's very much true. I'm going to wait till I get to the north node in her 8th house before I go into the north and the south nodes and how they play in. And I'll put up the graphics and you guys can see that then. So, again, Mercury ruling Virgo, it can move kind of fast. It's about speech, and it's about the hands, but it's very much about getting in there and getting it done and making sure that something is improving, on a daily basis. Because, Mercury moves around the sun every 88 days outside of our perspective, right? That's in the helio astronomy, that the Mercury moves around the sun every 88 days. But from our perspective, it takes, sometimes about a year, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on the retrogrades. So, moving on to the 3rd house. 3rd house also begins in Virgo, but there's a lot of Libra in there. Actually, Libra is intercepted. That means that her 1st house, you see, it starts in Leo, 2nd is in Virgo, 3rd is in Virgo, and then it skips Libra and goes to Scorpio in her 4th, right? So her 3rd house has 2 rulers, and some of the signs already have 2 rulers, but this creates a bit of a mental complication for her. So 3rd house being ruled starting in Virgo, so ruled by Mercury, but Libra is ruled by Venus. So now she has, her mind being ruled by Mercury and Venus, so her feel good, which is what Venus is, and that feminine energy in any of us, as well as her communication. But one of the things that helps her out is her Mercury in Aries, so it's very direct communication. But Mercury rules her 11th house, which is Gemini, and that's where her Venus is. So she may not even recognize that interception there, that gap, although there might be a Libra, or at some point a Libra, or she might think a lot about relationships, or she might talk a lot about them, right? That Mercury being in the 9th house, it's very philosophical, but ruling, so that her speech rules how she feels, and that's how her mind is constructed, and obviously how her speech is constructed. Some interceptions are considerably more difficult. Say, if her Venus was in Aquarius, then she would have to go through the difficulties of Saturn and Uranus in conjunction with that Mercury. So it would add a complication, right? So mine is very complicated in my chart because the ruler of my interception, my Capricorn, is in Cancer, but it's also intercepted. So there's work I have to do on both ends with my communication to bring it back into line so that I have a way to build my own legacy. But with D, her communication, as long as it's, direct, and as long as she's building solid philosophies about that, it works itself out. So I'm going to go ahead and go on into the 4th house. Her 4th house, beginning in Scorpio, is ruled by Mars and Pluto. Now, Pluto's already in Scorpio, and that Mars is in Aquarius. But that sixth house of work is ruled by Saturn. So that Mars has a general that is Saturn, and that's what Mars wants. Mars wants to be told what to do, and he likes a mission. He likes to be like, give me mission objectives, give me something straightforward that I can plunge into. Now that Aquarius might be a little weird, but Saturn rules Capricorn and also co-rules Aquarius, so it's not that far out of the realm. The difficulty with her fourth house is that Pluto is there. Now, Pluto is very difficult to deal with for anybody. Pluto and Scorpio generation is just after, the Gen X, and some people consider some of the early Pluto and Scorpio as Gen X, but being 1988, there's a bit of I've heard, Zennial or, a lot of different terms for that, but we can just boil that down to Pluto and Scorpio. Pluto being in the fourth house is difficult. It is about family patterns, because the fourth house is about home. It's about family. It's about where you feel comfortable and where you are at rest with yourself. It is where you feel emotionally safe. And Scorpio itself is, by nature, it hides, right? It's partially like Cancer. It is squishy on the inside, but Scorpio can and will attack. It will grab a hold of something and sting it and kill it. Cancer is not so much like that, and it moves sideways. Scorpio will go straight at you, but it will crawl back under its rock, and it will sun itself, and then, it looks sparkly, and it looks, fantastic, and it looks amazing, but it will hurt you if you mess with it. As a Leo rising, the natural progression, even if you're using full 30-degree arcs for each house, is going to end up with a fourth house that is Scorpio. So Leos and Leo risings, and specifically D here, they don't want anybody in their home they don't trust, right? Anybody that's been through the fire with them, that's their family, right? She may or may not have actual blood family, but anybody that's around her is definitely tribe, right? I don't know if she uses that word, but that's the word that has come up a lot lately, especially for me. So whoever is tribe, that's who she trusts. That's where home is. So it may not even be a physical place, and fourth house doesn't have to be. It's wherever you are at home. So there may be lots of Scorpios, or she may have grown up with Scorpios, or there may have been a lot of difficult transformation. There may have been some full-on breakdowns at home, because Scorpio will do that. And, Pluto will do that on its own too. The struggle here with Pluto is it's usually so terrifying that most people have to work around it. And I will count myself, even with a, Pluto and Libra generation, I will say that my children are Pluto and Sag, and I know a couple of Pluto and Capricorns, but not many. What I've seen is it's hard to deal with. Like, nobody wants to go all in, especially with family, right? You may be willing to go all in on your career, or you may be willing to go all in on certain kinds of relationships, or your daily life if you have a lot of Virgo energy in you. But Pluto asks you to push harder than you think you can to break through the veil, because as soon as you break through that, there is instant rebirth. There is no delay in a new life, a new self, and in this case, a new family, a new home. And sometimes you have to shift that home. That, you're a little scorpion under a rock, somebody picks the rock up, that's not safe anymore, we got to find a new rock to live under. Or we were sunning ourselves on that rock and we felt safe because this is our little area, and now there's a bigger scorpion, or there's, a bunch of birds, and we got to go. All of those things, or any of those things, may happen throughout Dee's life, or any of our lives, and we have to shift where home is. But when we push hard, that's when things really transform. Super powerful, amazing, and the depths of growth with Pluto in the fourth are they will only end where you think they can end, right? So I would say to anybody that has Pluto in the fourth, or even D specifically, push hard because you're going to get back everything you put into it. Moving on to fifth house in Sagittarius. Fifth house is Leo themes again. So we are talking about creation. We are talking about entertainment. We're talking about fun. We're talking about, and again, creation is also about children or sometimes our pets, depending if there are fur babies or not, as I know a lot of people have. And Leo or the fifth house is very much when somebody says life to you, this is exactly what it is. This is what we all want to do. This is the creative thing that we want to do. This is the fun. This is the party time. And starting in Sagittarius, there is a huge want for this, right? We've got somebody that's a fire sign sun and a Leo rising. They want a party. D wants to throw down, let's go, right? With a Jupiter ruling that fifth house in Taurus, she's got to feel good about it, right? It may take her some time. It takes a little bit of momentum to start anything with Taurus. And as with anything second house or anything Taurus. So she's got to feel good to expand. There's lots of doors that were open for her in her life, lots of different experiences when she goes into these things, right? And with when Saturn and Uranus there in her fifth house, she wants to create a life where she gets experience, where there's probably technology right there with legacy things. That's Saturn. And with Neptune also in her fifth house, but all three of those are in Capricorn. There is a longer momentum here, right? So Jupiter in Taurus, ruling her fifth house, is creating a bit of a momentum. Like he takes some time to get moving, right? As longer he goes, he will open more doors and open more experiences. And as that goes, she is willing to take more radical changes, which is what Uranus is. He will, he's the radical masculine change. He will change anything, anywhere, anytime. So you've got both rulers of Aquarius there in her fifth house. So there's a very Aquarian, very strange, I would say legacy with her about partying or about general life. And it may have taken her a while to get there. With all three of these planets retrograde, it's going to take just, again, a little bit more time. It's not as loud as it normally would be. With Neptune, there's not as much fog or as much tapped in, I would say, spiritual overtones or overt things. She might be very reluctant to, I will say, medicate herself, because that's also part of Neptune or Pisces, is about addictions. Saturn will create any pattern that you give him, right? Anywhere. If you are dragging your plow through the middle of the street, you will eventually create a groove. And you keep dragging your plow through the middle of the street, creating that groove deeper and deeper and deeper. That's what Saturn will do for you. But if you try to create another groove right beside that, you're going to have to really work. You're going to have to start from zero. Now, you've got some skill at doing it, and you've got the sustainability to create that. And with Jupiter, in charge of this fifth house, there's some luck involved with it. There's some doors that have been opened so that you or D can create that, but you still have to do the work, right? It's still got to be done. And to get that done, she's willing to make, again, like Uranus, make radical changes to do that. And with Neptune there in that fifth house, she's receiving divine guidance on how to do that. And there are aspects from all three of those planets straight up to her Jupiter that rules that house. So, it helps a lot. And that's a trine. It's a 120-degree angle. And that's a very friendly angle. But those are lots of elements feeding into her luck, right? So when she parties, it tends to go in a certain direction. And if she doesn't want to go in that direction, then it becomes erratic. That's what Uranus will show you. Anything in your life that gets strange in a way that you don't like, anything you don't understand, anything that's weird, And if anything becomes, like I said, erratic again, he will show you that's not for you, right? Then if something feels good, you're like, yep, this is my vibe, right? That is very Uranus. This is my vibe. Saturn's like, okay, which vibe do you want? Which one do you want to pick? Pick one, and I'll let you go on that one. Or if you have a certain manner of going from this vibe to the next, I will let you jump from here to there repeatedly. If you go from one thing to two or three things, that Saturn might let you do it because he's retrograde. He's not quite at full power there because he's retrograde, even though he is in his home sign of Capricorn, but it's still in that fifth house ruled by Jupiter. And before I move on to the sixth house here, talk so much about those two, Neptune. Neptune is our ideals. That is where we have belief and faith. And this is also where a lot of people tend to get into, like I said, either addictions or substances. Not obsession, because obsession is Scorpio. That's definitely more Pluto and not necessarily Mars. But Neptune can be there. So there may have been, I will say, generational things with all three of those planets in Capricorn. But hopefully she has seen, and that's what I think the retrograde motion there is. She has seen that previous generations that have gone into those things, it didn't go well, and she wants the party to keep rolling. She knows that her luck is when that party keeps going, you keep everybody cool and chill, and if your ideals are broad enough, and if you are following the divine line on things, that party doesn't ever stop. It never does. So let's go on to the sixth house. Sixth house is our daily work. That is our all of our routines, all of them. So whether it's, brushing your teeth or the kinds of shoes you like to wear, every day, this is work. And this is, our nutrition and how we improve things. Sixth house in Capricorn is a little bit difficult, and it does take quite some time to get that moving. And, the rest of that sixth house is in Aquarius, but it's also ruled by Saturn. And again, it goes back to that momentum of that fifth house to create the daily life that Dee wants. And she wants to create a legacy of improvement, of making sure that things are good and they are foundational, and that, she can build these things. Look, I can build something, that I built this for me. This is mine. And interesting that the planet that rules her sixth house is actually in her fifth. So you can see the logical progression of how some of these things move forward. The fifth house sets up the sixth, and the sixth onto the seventh, and, and so forth. With interceptions because of, two houses starting in Virgo and in Pisces, it kind of disrupts that a little bit. But because, again, back to that Mercury ruling the Venus for that third house, it makes it just a little bit easier. There is a bit of a hiccup, but it does make it a little bit easier. So Mars in the sixth house, she's very dedicated to improving things, right? That works back even psychologically to the second house of valuing work and valuing making sure things are pure and making things are sure that they are of service. Mars in the house that is ruled by Capricorn, by Saturn, he wants to be there. Now, asking the soldier, asking Mars to improve something is kind of out of his realm. Like, he doesn't necessarily know what to do about that. I've seen Mars in Aquarius before, and what I see that it does, and the way it's been described to me, is Mars in Aquarius is an alien spacecraft. It's flying around and it doesn't necessarily know what to do, and it's like it's got some criteria of who it wants to abduct, and it will fly around and look at things and go, oh wait, that's the person that I want, or that's the little cow that I want to beam up here, and it will beam somebody up, and now you're in their little tribe, and now you're in their daily life. Congratulations. It's like a spear fisherman standing on the side of the lake looking for the perfect fish to spear. But that when you're standing on the side, that what you're looking down into the water, there's a difference in angle, right? So you have to learn the difference in angle. So sometimes what a Mars in Aquarius thinks it's spearing, it spears something else. Or when it spears it, it's like, oh, okay, I got it. Now what do I, wait, oh, that's not exactly what I thought I got. And you might do the infamous catch and release, right? Nope, that's not what I was after, and just drop it. And it can feel a little cold. You know, Mars in Aquarius can feel strange, and you might get that caught something and then let it go. But that's Aquarius, in the vibe, out of the vibe, right? And being able to, you know, with her being a feminine energy, she might be looking for a masculine energy to do that, like be in or at, you know, in a vibe with me and then out of a vibe with me, or vibe with me, right, daily, to create a legacy with me that I'm vibing with, and be here with me daily. So no matter where I improve or help me improve this thing, sometimes by getting out of alignment with me to help me go, wait a minute, you know what, that is a better way, let's go do that, right? That's what Mars is. He's a seasoned soldier, and he sees a different way, you know, to create a battle plan. And he is a bit of a genius, a little bit, but it is still strange, and it takes him some time, right? It's still co-ruled by Saturn, so it does take time to figure these things out. Let's move on to the 7th house, which is about relationships. And this is all relationships. This is friends, this is enemies, this is business partners, this is any relationship that we have. And in addition to any relationship, any chart can be looked at as all internal, right? It doesn't have to be, no element of any chart has to be external. We can sort all of these things out on our own. Like if we were, and I've told this people, you know, repeatedly, that if you were on a desert island and your best friend was a volleyball, you could sort all of these things out on your own, and all of us would fall into certain patterns, and that's okay, because that's, you know, I love patterns. This is one of the reasons why I do astrology. But this is also how Dee creates balance with herself, right? She has to learn to find her own vibe, right? And with Saturn currently in Aquarius, that is definitely what he is teaching us. He is teaching us that sometimes it's okay for the collective to be an authority, and sometimes we have to be the authority for the collective, right? And that goes back and forth. And being able to find her own line, find her own vibe, or being able to vibe with other people is what creates balance in her life, is what creates relationship balance and creates fairness for her. So with with Saturn and Uranus in Capricorn, Uranus doesn't necessarily want to be in Capricorn, but he's okay with, you know, with being there with, you know, with Saturn. It creates a little bit more of a fun vibe, because that 5th house is, you know, I mean, it's 5th house, so it's fun, it's entertaining, it's excitement, it's fun, and ruled by Jupiter, so there's expansion there. So there's an expansive nature to her relationships, but there's a pattern element of the way she goes from one to the next, right? She might go along with something for a long time and create a legacy of doing that in Capricorn, and then as she improves it, sometimes something might improve in a different direction, and she might go, you know what, I don't vibe with that anymore, and it's okay, and just move right on. But Aquarius can also go, you know what, I don't like that, that's not my vibe, I'm done with it, click, and it's turned off. But each time we are in an Aquarian vibe, we need to gauge where we're at, right? If we're gauging where everybody else is at all the time, we lose ourselves, and then that loses our balance, and then things become, as I said before with Uranus, they become erratic. And that's what shows us what to let go of. Because if something's erratic, it's got to go. But if we vibe, if something's innovating, if something's new and weird and fun and strange, cool, send it. So there might be a lot of very interesting things and a lot of weird relationships in her life, because that's what Aquarius is. It's definitely the weird. So let's move on to the 8th house. The 8th house is about trust. It is about rebirth. It is about deep emotional experiences. It is about how deep you go with yourself or anybody else, and you know what those topics are going to be about. And with an 8th house encapsulated inside Pisces, this is about the divine. This is about magic. This is about creating boundaries, and this is about letting go. So also with the North Node, actually I'm going to get back to that in just a bit. I'll talk about Pisces for a minute. Pisces has two rulers, right? Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and Dee's Neptune is in Capricorn in that 5th house, and by Jupiter, and her Jupiter is in her 10th house in Taurus. So where she develops trust in her life is through those fun, entertaining elements in her life that create that expansion for her, as with any Leo, and with the expansive and luck elements in her public life or her career. So in order, and it will feed the other way too. If she trusts the divine, if she trusts her ability to draw boundaries, or there may have been, there's probably some, Pisces in her life that she wanted to trust, right? With the North Node there, her life is set up to be trusting. So there's probably not much there. So does she trust those Virgos? Yes, she does. Or should she trust them? Yes. Should she trust her own work and her own methods of improvement and her communication and what she puts her hands to on a daily basis? Yes. And as soon as she does that, it will immediately become that divine trust, or that trusting in the divine of the North Node there in the 8th house. So, trusting that whatever label you put on the divine, which is, I think, where we are created from, where there are no boundaries, because Pisces doesn't have any boundaries. You have to create them, right? That's what the two arcs are. It's two worlds coming together, and that line is the boundary that we draw, right? When something comes in that's magical, we don't, whoa, where did that come from? It was a little weird, but it was magical. It bounced into us, and it touched us in some way. It was completely magical, like, wow. But trusting that magic to come in, and trusting where it came from and what it brought, may also be the issue of, distrust. And now that I've gotten into her North Node from the South, here's the graphic that I use to sort out the North Node. And I found these at Kim Akinta is an amazing astrologer from Australia. She actually has a group on Facebook, Astrology Explorers. I have learned a ton from just lurking in that group. People post their charts all the time. They ask each other questions. There's just a ton of information in that group and from Kim. I honestly, I don't think I've ever watched any of her videos on YouTube, strangely. Watched everybody else's. But, okay, so Deeth's South Node is in Virgo. So South Node in houses, 1 through 6, and North Node in 7 through 12. So her quest is to be public and to connect with others, and the fuel is herself driven by others, right? So we will look at the North Node being in Pisces, right, as enlightenment. So her soul wants to reconnect with the world, and she has to trust, wants to reconnect with the divine, and she has to trust in that. And there's definitely trust issues with there. It's 8th house. It is what it is. Very Aquarius. And because it's 8th house and it's Pisces, you really kind of have to look at two different spaces with this, right? You look at North Node in Pisces for enlightenment, right? And you also look in North Node in Scorpio for genuineness, being genuine, being truthful, right? Because Scorpio can obscure, and Pisces also does that. Pisces is beyond storytelling. It will weave a web of fogginess, and it will go on and on and on, and it will lose, like, the lengths that Sagittarius will go to create a story has nothing on Pisces. Pisces will go on, and you will get lost, and you will get lost in the story, and it will completely fog out, and it's very subconscious, right? It's very suppressed also. So we're going to look at the nodes in the eighth house. We're also going to look at 8, and we're going to look at 12. So the quest is to deal with others, and the resource is what you have, right? So that would be eighth house and second house. So quest is to deal with others. That's Scorpio, and the resource is what you have. That's Taurus. And we'll also look at the 12th house. There, quest is to represent the downtrodden, or anybody who has been misrepresented, or anybody who has had losses, anybody who has been let go, or sometimes it is to let go. The quest is to let go. So she might not want to let go of anything, right? And the resource is your ability to care for yourself, right? That would be Virgo or sixth house or daily work, right? So message straight to D. D, you're an Aries. You are a Leo rising. You got that Aries moon that I haven't gotten to yet. Your work is valuable. You are a powerful fire sign. You don't know how to not charge in. Your work, your improvement process is valuable. Value yourself. Value your work. And you are creating that daily. You know where you're creating it. You see, now that, you are, past your Saturn return, you know where you've got a clear picture of what that is. You know how your life was up till that point. So you know where to continue moving forward, right? And since we're going to the nodes, and I mentioned Saturn return, I'm going to go into that real quick. So here is the first 0 degree Saturn return transit chart for D. And that was on the 10th of January, 2018, not too long ago, at 5:42 p.m. in Missouri. And I'm not sure, I think she was still there. She's told me the city that she's in currently, but it's still in that same time zone. So that was very, it's obviously intense. So you got any time, and any of you that follow your own astrological charts at all, you know that when the moon passes over any of your planetary placements, any of them, you'll get a rush of that feeling, right? Where, or any other planet in, square or trine or opposition, you feel this intensity in you and you're not sure what it's about. You might feel sad or happy or, just big emotion, or you might try to feel emotion. I know my Aquarius people and my Virgos, they tend to be a little anxious about it, depending on what's going on. So as the moon moves through every month, we get just a little taste of the emotions of those bigger arcs. Not everyone gets just one pass with a Saturn return. Sometimes Saturn will move straight through and you will just get one pass, but the transits before that will be very intense and they will really grind it home. And then when he passes through, it's basically like, hey, all that stuff you just went through, you learned it, right? And by the time he comes through, you're like, yep, I got it, I'm good, man. And he will move right on about his business. As you guys can see, and D, you obviously as well, you can see that before that Saturn came up and met at 2 degrees, Lilith had moved through, and she's pretty close to there too. Pluto had marched through too. He had gone from her 4th house, through Scorpio, through Sagittarius, went over that vertex, went over Uranus, went over Saturn, went over Neptune, and now, back then, January 10th of 2018, the Sun and Venus at some point, just months before, had all been conjunct together in Capricorn. That's not easy. Venus and the moon, they do not want to be near that death and rebirth of Pluto. And Pluto on Saturn is rough. And I'm sure, since then, D, you've probably had a bit of a shell-shocked look on your face, like, what happened? These things that started into my home and things that went into all of my creations and went over the top of all of my entertainment and my experiences, and they made me, Uranus, changed things radically, and certain things that I thought were legacy just ended, and then new things started out of nowhere. And then what I thought my ideals were, they just shut the door, and other ones just kick doors wide open. You're like, what is going on with my life? And with Pluto still here at the end of Capricorn, your daily life is still being transformed, right? You've learned and you've seen those things. So you know that destruction isn't death. It's not the same thing. And I heard a quote recently, it was from a series on Netflix. Despair is not the same thing as defeat. It's not the same thing, right? It's just despair. It's you didn't lose. You just transformed. It was difficult and you may have had to chew your leg off to get out of the trap. But after you were free, you were like, cool, now I can keep living, right? And, with that sun there in Capricorn, just after, that's in the wintertime, right? Venus doesn't want to be there. She doesn't like being there. And with Pluto there, the sun there, none of those things are at power. And with a Saturn return, I know that was rough, but you got through it, right? You got through it. You're still good. You may not think you've got quite the shine you used to, but you do. You know that your relationships were foundational back then. That's what the South Node in Aquarius was. Keep things weird, keep moving, keep on your own vibe, keep vibing from one thing to the next. And that created immediately that fun, energetic, creative, bouncy fire sign energy that you want to project out into the world. And even for you, whether you create that for somebody else is irrelevant. You got to create that for you. And those transformational elements are not easy. Here's a quick screenshot of what I mean by those, more than one transit, right? So she got the first pass, so Saturn went through in January, and then he retrograded back by September, back to that same degree. And then he stopped right on top of it. Man, that's cruel. And then he went forward again. So Saturn parked on her Saturn as it's, during that return period for quite some time, like for the majority of the year. And he didn't clear until, Saturn didn't clear. It didn't get out of that 8-degree orb because he's really big. So most transits are 3 to 5 degrees, depending on which two planets, how close they are together. But Saturn, because he's so massive, and Jupiter does the same kind of thing, most astrologers will give like 5 to 8. So I just did 8 here. And with her natal Saturn at 2 degrees, and you add 8 to that, actually that would be 10. So I need to move forward till it's at least at 11 degrees, and then it's moving off. So January of 2019, and then the sun was conjunct then, as you guys can see. The South Node had moved into Capricorn, so now she's realizing that her short period South Node and her foundation are in her own legacy, right? So that was a good time for that. And then she's realizing that she needed to be more emotional about things. That North Node in Cancer in the 12th, trying to bring more emotion out, because fire signs, they do have trouble with emotions. Earth signs do too, right? Air signs might, water signs, we got it nailed, right? We know all about emotions. Not that other signs don't, but as that 9th house Aries sun, that philosopher that she is, or that she's working to be, that you're working to be, D, going more into the emotional spaces will tap you into those people. And now that I've gone into that, let's go ahead and go into the 9th house. So your 9th house starts in Pisces, but the Aries is intercepted, meaning there's no line, there's no house line that starts or ends on Aries. And it's just like the opposite sign down there in your 3rd house in Libra. So it has 2 sets of rulers. So we have to start off with Pisces, and then we have to add the Aries ruler to it so that we can get to it. Because there is whether it was the Libra that was missing in your life early on, or whether it was the Aries, or whether there wasn't balanced relationships, or whether there was you didn't know how to start things, or you didn't know what face to show to people, or how to go directly at things. You have decided, in your mind has created this complex way to get to it, of going kind of directly at expansion. It's not completely direct, but with Neptune and Jupiter that are the rulers of Pisces, right? Both of them are in signs that are Earth, right? So Jupiter in Taurus, Neptune in Capricorn. Those are the two of the three Earth signs. And with Mars being in Aquarius, even though it is in Aquarius, it's still ruled by Saturn, so there's still a groundedness to it, but it has a bit of a changeable nature to it. It has a bit of a, one wavelength and then the next wavelength. So adding all those things together, so your ideals are grounded and they're about, anything of legacy. Your luck and your expansion, right, and that's Jupiter, it takes some momentum to move, right? It's Taurus. It takes a while. It needs to know physical value, right? Those need to be your public values, the values that you draw from the people in public, maybe even, drawn from people who are Taurus or people that are grounded in their value systems, right? That can influence it too. So that's a very grounded approach for somebody that is a fire sign, and that may be your way of compensating. So a lot of these things, even though they are astrology, they are very grounded in psychology. So, everybody knows that people who don't have, I'll just say, don't have a sense in some, whether you're blind or you have trouble hearing or your touch is as good as it can be, or you may not be fast or you're not tall or whatever the thing might be. You have a way of going at the world as a compensation kind of way. And astrology is no different than that. So instead of going directly at philosophy, she kind of goes at it from a value perspective, right? So we have Capricorn, that's long-term value. We have Taurus, that's, immediate value. And you have Mars that can jump in, Aquarius, and you go, oh, I see that. That's quick. I can go and get that right now. Bam, jump over and get something of value, which is, definitely that Aries energy, right? So now that we've kind of got a vibe or a feel for that ninth house, now we can go into the planets that are in there. The moon being in Aries is obviously very direct. And anytime any of these planets are aspected, or anytime that they are brought up in some kind of way, whether they're your identification D or whether you speak or how your emotions are, those are places where they could very possibly expand your entire life in some sort of way. So Moon in Aries is obviously very direct, and it's very passionate, and it wants to expand, it wants to grow, it wants to be more connected to youthful energy. It wants to be, it will guide you, right? It's the moon. It has a knowing. It's your intuition, and it's very, I would say, even early on, we're looking here at like 1 degree of Aries. It's not completely youthful, right? It's not a 0 degrees Aries moon. It does have a little bit of experience. It's in Aries, right? So it has some experience, and in that ninth house, that's exactly what you're after. You're like, okay, I've seen some things, I felt some stuff, I've got a little bit of intuition, let's see where you can go with it. But it's very fast, right? And the rulers of that house are trying to slow you down just a little bit, right? So that you're not as impulsive. You possibly see your impulsiveness as causing you problems in this area, but, creating a legacy of going directly at philosophies, or going directly at experiences, or going directly towards finding out the meaning of life or the purpose of you in the universe, right? That can speed all of these planets up, right? Instead of them being slower, as I suspect they are because of the rulers, right? So Mercury in Aries, obviously direct and usually fast. And again, in Aries, it's going to be fiery. It's going to be hot. It is going to be, again, but it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. There's a youthful knowing. Like everybody knows that children do know certain things when they come in, and sometimes better than the adults that that are taking care of them. And this is a little bit of both of that. This is, you have gained some experience, and you also have that youthful knowing, right? And when you speak, people hear that. They hear that energeticness. They have that fire, that energy that you bring to this. And they also hear that grounded kind of whole house that you've got here in the ninth. So, and as well as your sun being here in Aries, you identify yourself. You know that, okay, I'm an Aries, and I am working on my personal philosophies. That isn't what I'm going directly at. I need experience. I need to seek something higher than myself. And you're definitely doing that. This reading is obviously proving one of those things. You want to seek more of yourself, and that's definitely very Aries. It's useful. Aries is the explosion that comes out of Pisces. Pisces is the pre-Big Bang, right? And then something magical happens inside Pisces, and Aries is, and let there be light. There's direct fire. It comes out of that. And that's what Aries is. And you've got a legacy of doing that, of older belief systems, and you've got new physical belief systems that you are creating there, and they are expanding you, and you're seeing where you can do that, and you're talking about them, and you're letting your intuition guide you. It's really good. This is good stuff. The difficulty with all of that Earth is it might slow you down. It might take you some time to build those structures in your life. We've talked about your Saturn return, and that happened when you were 30. That was 4 years ago. So since then, you have been seeing that you need to move forward. And actually last year, when you were 33, there was a lot of those expansive elements. And this year is your 10th house year. This is about your fame. You're building on the things that you saw, the year before last, right? Or last year, excuse me. So last year was much more about higher learning and self-discovery, and rekindling. There's probably things from your childhood. Aries is also things about the child, right? And becoming the emperor or the empress also. And again, the masculine and feminine's coming out there. So I guess we'll just move on to the 10th house, because we just started talking about it. So the 10th house is our fame. This is how we're known. Even people that don't know us can see this, and this is our career. This is, the face that the public sees no matter what we do. Any celebrities, this is what we know of them, of anybody that is in the public, right? And people that see Dee know that she opens doors probably with her beauty, right? Because it's in Taurus, and there's a lot of it, right? Or she has a lot of value to her, or she values herself, and she has gained that value. You see the opposition there, down there in Pluto and Scorpio, from her home, and that's always the way it works. Like, whatever we build in the home is immediately shown, right? Is shown out into our 10th house, into our fame, our career, our public life, and our public relationships also too, right? That 10th house is ruled by Venus, and now we've come back to, your communication again. So you have to feel good about being in public, right? And you have transformed yourself at home and transformed yourself with the people that you feel safe with, and now you can go out into the world and you can open a lot of doors, right? You get a lot of luck when you feel good, and this, and you might even be teaching people how to do this. How do people have physical value in themselves? And all of these astrological elements, they all transmit and receive. We all find other people that are like us, right? She might find a lot of Tauruses. She might find a lot of people that have personal value with themselves. With Jupiter there might be a considerable amount of luck doing this also. And when you boost that, when you get those experiences, those public experiences and those fame type experiences with beauty or physical value, right? Or you make yourself feel better, that also boosts your Venus. That makes that Venus feel good, and then your communication expands, right? And that's how I think your online presence probably works. You've done some transformational things at home, you project out into the world, you get lucky, you see that, you expand, you find that value in yourself in public, and you're like, wait a minute, there's value here in my face being out here in public. I can tell people about my experiences. And then once you start communicating that, then everything starts really rolling, right? So, and then it feeds back on itself because you can understand how that works. So, then on to the 11th house. Or I've talked about this a little bit before. 11th house is ruled, it starts in Gemini and ruled by Mercury. And Mercury in Aries is very fast, but it's kind of grounded by those elements in, Capricorn and in Taurus, and also that Mars in Aquarius. So this kind of slows it down a little bit. Actually, that Mars speeds it up a little bit, so it may be a little bit of back and forth, right? But Mercury's fast. It is always fast, and sometimes it takes a while to build the momentum on Mercury. But in Gemini, and with Venus there, I guarantee you love talking, you love talkers, you love people that express themselves, you love people that show their inner beauty. You find that out in the public, and that is shown back and forth to you, and it expands back and forth. The other symbol there in Gemini, in the 11th house, is Chiron. He is the wounded healer of the zodiac. He was unable to heal himself, but he could heal others, and that's exactly how this works in our lives. All of us have a placement somewhere with Chiron, and the best way to go at it is very directly. And with your Mercury in Aries, and when you communicate to people out in public, that is a perfect way to do it, right? It's a very direct action to take, is speaking about value and speaking about yourself, speaking directly to people, because you're more yourself out in public than you think you are, right? Your truest self comes out when you're out amongst your people. Now, they may not be a lot of people, because this is the 11th house and it's Gemini, so it's about closeness, it's about close up to you, it's about your close local environment, right? So there may not be a lot of actual elements there, but when you go into that space, when you go into those friend groups, when you go and speak to people out in public, that heals that portion of you that thinks you're not heard, because that's exactly what that is. Chiron on the 11th it feels like it's not heard. And something funny, hopefully for you and for anybody else that's listening to this, I have had to start and stop this section with Chiron about 5 or 6 times, and it has taken me at least 15 minutes going back and forth. So I understand the difficulty you have sometimes, but again, when you go directly at your wound, you heal other people in ways that you cannot imagine. And that's always the case. Like, my Chiron's in the 4th house. When I'm at home with people, or people feel like they're family with me, or I feel like they're family, whatever, I heal people's homes. You are healing people's inner selves when you are out with them, your friends, whenever you're speaking about the collective humanity, and you can see their inner wounding, it's there because it's inside of you too, right? In an interesting way, Dee, you have started your humanitarian service of the 12th house in the 11th, because you're, out there giving your gift of speech and teaching people and showing people how beautiful you are on the inside with your language, right? And how you connect with them. And that carries into Cancer, right? And then the 12th house, here we go. So that is ruled by the moon, and that's ruled by that Aries moon in the 9th house. 12th house is where we undo ourselves, where we sacrifice ourselves, and this is also where we run away. These are parts of ourselves that are suppressed. And now we can actually go and look back at the moon and see how this is possibly enabling itself to be suppressed, and emotions, and how to care for people, and how people care for you, or how you allow them to care for you, right? Your 9th house Aries moon is actually in square to Saturn Uranus, and that really slows that emotional part of you down quite a bit. Even though it's very impulsive and very powerful, and it can be erratic, but Saturn is trying to show you and teach you how to, at a minimum, care for yourself, because all of these elements are for us to start off with, right? Our whole chart, our whole lives is about how we care for ourselves, how we speak for ourselves, how we, go out in the world. And all of these things are for us first, because we have to fill our cup first, right? And that goes back to that Venus in Gemini. That's exactly what that is. Dee has to fill her cup first before she can fill anybody else's cup. But as soon as she does, man, she's got plenty for everybody else, right? She's got plenty for the people that are in her circle. It might be a tight little inner circle, fourth house Scorpio with Pluto there, 11th house Gemini. It might be small, but it's okay. Now, I have a Moon Uranus conjunction, like mine are very close together. So I imagine the square there with, your moon and your Uranus, all those Saturns added there, probably has a similar kind of feel. But you probably feel drawn to either make an erratic change, like you feel an emotion coming up, you're like, nope, I got to shut that down, I need to go another direction. Feel it, let it happen, right? Because that is one of your guidance systems showing you where to go and how to gain that nurturing that you didn't have, right? That's what 12th house is. Also, it's something you didn't have, or some people believe that that's what you didn't give to others in your past life. And however you want to look at this, it's a part of you that you have a difficulty getting to. It's very suppressed. So when you feel those emotions coming on, and when you can kind of feel yourself turning away from it, let yourself feel it, right? And you've just had your Saturn return a couple of years ago, and now Saturn's in Aquarius, and it's transforming your relationships right now. He's right at the end, and he's retrograde. So, and it's probably triggering your moon a little bit, as that move through there in various ways. And every time the moon goes through Aries, actually the moon's in Taurus right now, so just a couple of days ago, it moved across your moon, and it may have lit some of those things up, right? Anytime it lights those things up, anytime something hits your moods, feel them. Let them happen, D. Go into them, and it might take you a while, because it is Saturn and Uranus. It might take you a while. It might feel weird. I guarantee you it's going to feel weird, because it's Uranus. It feels weird, right? Anything about Uranus feels weird. You might be emotional about, your technology. You might feel emotional about your TV or your phone, or, anything that can bring you entertainment. Maybe not your car, because it's not about Mercury or Gemini, but it's fifth house. So there's fifth house elements there. It's about entertainment. So go into those feelings, right? Watch a movie that has deep emotional impact to you, and see how it feels, and let yourself go into that, because that is a powerful tool for you to guide yourself into your life to expand, right? And that'll also expand your 12th house, and that will allow you to, to deconstruct yourself, to let go, to let the divine work through you, and let magic come into your life. Because when you do let those caring elements into your life, there's so much more to it than you thought possible, right? You may have some things in your head like, wow, I didn't realize that I could do that. I didn't know that I could give this gift to somebody. I didn't know that I could allow myself to have this. And it does feel nice. And as soon as that happens, you're expanding, your fire gets lit back up, and then we rotate around, and now we're back at the Leo rising. And as soon as that Cancer, as soon as you feel those nurturing elements in you, boom, the fire gets lit, and here you are back off out into the world. It is a magical rotational building block, and this is your fingerprint. This is your map for life, D. This is how things work for you, and all of these elements, they can be looked at in so many different ways. It's so crazy and so cool and so magical. And I've been doing astrology for a couple of years now, but I've been interested in my spiritual expansion most of my life. and I see things all the time, but I have to feel them. I can't just suppress it, because when I suppress it, it just gets buried, and then it erupts out in a very uncomfortable way later on, right? You got to feel it to heal it. So, anybody else? Everybody else, thank you so much for coming here and listening to Dee's reading. Dee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this for you. And as always, you guys can find me on TikTok and Facebook and YouTube at North Node Astrology. And I hope to talk to you guys later on. Thanks.